The stars of the inner ring glittered coldly in the black eternal, untouchable, perfect. But far out on the edge of the civilized galaxy, there burned one ugly little sun, yellow and unremarkable. Around it spun a mudball called Earth, dismissed. In every Shalver education system as a Class 5 bioactive planet with unstable native fauna and primitive, electromagnetic emissions. To the high families, it was background noise. But to Arixa of House Nylareth, it was the only thing that ever made her heart race. She stood aboard the observation deck of the cruiser Vithalan Dusk, watching the swirling clouds over the planet. As they descended into low orbit, her skin, crystalline silver in the soft violet light of the ship's interior, tingled with something she couldn't name. Not fear, not excitement. Something in between. Something dangerous. Arixa was not like the others in her caste. While most Shalvers saw humans as curious savages, as unpredictable and self-destructive, she saw them as something else entirely. In their history violent, unbroken, defiant, she had seen a threat of fire. The kind of fire her people had. Extinguished long ago in the name of peace. Fire that could create or burn entire galaxies. Her request to attend an Earth-based learning institute had shocked the royal curia. The grand matrons had called it unnecessary, reckless, but because of her rank, they allowed it. They thought it was an eccentric fascination, a harmless academic pursuit. They didn't know what she knew. They hadn't studied the lost records from the first contact incident 2 centuries ago. They didn't hear the same tone she heard. In the way the humans spoke, she did. Earth's air hit her like an electric slap thick with oxygen. Smells, uncontrolled life. Her shuttle landed at a university campus on the Pacific coast of what humans called California. Birds wheeled above. Humans gathered in chaotic clusters, talking over each other, laughing, fighting, touching. They were loud, unfiltered, unrestrained. She spotted a group of boys hurling a round object between them, shouting, tackling, laughing as one missed and tumbled into a muddy patch of grass. The one who fell got up grinning, smeared with dirt, and launched the object again without hesitation. Another shouted a curse that made Arixa's translator stall before spitting out untranslatable vulgarity, recreational context. Arixa stared. These creatures, illogical, impulsive, maddening, radiated something her own people had long bred out. Not just strength, not even bravery, something deeper. A kind of beautiful feral resilience. Every species in the galaxy operated within bounds, biological, social, ideological. But humans had a talent for breaking limits, as though they were made to be shattered. At the orientation, she was introduced as a diplomatic guest. Some students gawked at her shimmering form, others ignored her completely. She was given access to Earth's public data networks, and she drowned herself in their history, culture, and conflict. Within days, she saw the pattern. Humans worshipped chaos. They didn't avoid pain, they challenged it. They didn't fear loss, they turned it into fuel. They had survived world wars, extinction events, ideological collapse, and near-planetary environmental failure. And each time, they improved. No species should evolve that fast. She began noting anomalies. Human biology was wildly inconsistent, but their adaptive capacity bordered on obscene. Muscle repair rates, trauma processing, even neuroplasticity were far above the galactic average. And then there was their psychology, individualistic to the point of irrationality, yet capable of spontaneous mass cooperation if the threat was shared. Their greatest minds emerged from hardship. Their breakthroughs came during conflict. They thrived under pressure. She watched the boys again, now brawling over something trivial, fists flying with an eagerness that stunned her. One took a punch to the jaw and laughed. Another pulled him up, and they stumbled off as friends again. Her kind would have filed grievances and invoked honor codes. These boys just shrugged it off. There were no protocols here. Just instinct. Well, one of them, Rafe, noticed her watching. "You're not from around here, are you?" he said with a grin that wasn't hostile, just amused. Arixa hesitated. Her translator fumbled again. "I am visiting." "No kidding. You glow." He offered a hand, covered in dirt, and scraped at the knuckles. She stared at it. Such a simple gesture. But it wasn't submission or diplomacy. It was challenge, invitation, a choice. She took it. That night, back in her temporary housing, she sent a secure data packet to the Shalver command relay. A warning disguised as a research update. Human systems, chaotic, redundant, inefficient. Yet individually, their members exhibit anomalous cognitive and emotional traits. Latent aggression remains high. Psychological thresholds are dangerously elastic. Recommend reevaluation of strategic assumptions regarding Terran civilizations. Their culture is not broken. It is forged. There was no reply. Of course not. To them, Earth was nothing, but Arixa had seen enough. The way they moved, fought, laughed, challenged everything around them. It wasn't evolution. It was defiance, incarnate. The Shalver thought they were watching an undeveloped world, but they weren't watching Earth. Earth was watching them. The moon hung silently in Earth's sky, pale and unblinking. But behind it, nestled in the gravity shadow, floated a Shalver fleet, cloaked and silent. A dozen battleships and observation vessels humming with the faint pulse of ion cores. From that hidden vantage point, the alien strategists watched Earth like a hawk watches prey, too small to notice it's already being hunted. High Strategos. Velchar sat in the command nexus of the dreadnought Vorvalon. His features were like carved glass, unmarred by time or worry. Around him, streams of intelligence scrolled in holographic threads, maps of Earth's military installations, data on electromagnetic emissions, biosigns, political instability indexes. Everything pointed to one conclusion. Earth remained fractured, inefficient, and oblivious. Primitive. "Deploy the net," he ordered. "Let us see how the Terrans respond when their world goes dark." The net was a Shalver marvel, an orbital web of precision-engineered MP satellites designed to simultaneously short-circuit all planetary electronics without causing structural damage. Elegant, clean, subjugation without bloodshed. A mercy, really. But the moment the satellites activated, the lights over North America brightened instead of dying. Then, for a fraction of a second, every Shalver sensor blinked, blinded by a feedback loop they couldn't explain. Velchar's console flared red with system errors. Then the satellites started going offline one by one, as if picked off by invisible hands. On Earth, Arixa sat motionless in a student commons area, sipping something warm and bitter called coffee, her translator now fluent in 25 Terran dialects, thanks to binge-watching a thing called stand-up comedy. She didn't look up when the news alert blared across campus screens. Unauthorized satellite. Disruption detected. Countermeasures deployed. The humans barely paused. A group of engineering students laughed and muttered something about amateurs, while a few pulled out their phones to track debris falling into the atmosphere. It was treated like a meteor shower. To them, it was Tuesday, but Arixa saw deeper signs. Civilians didn't panic, but civilian air traffic subtly altered routes. Certain unmarked trucks began moving through city streets in convoys. An entire university server array went dark, not because it was damaged, but because it chose to shut down. Systems across the planet began to behave like living things. Arixa accessed a military feed through her diplomatic clearance and saw something that froze her blood. Earth's orbital defense grid had been tracking the Shalver net for weeks. It had been allowed to get into place. They'd known and let it happen. She sent a coded message up to the Vorvalon immediately. "Abort. They are not reacting. They are responding," but it was already too late. On the Vorvalon, Velchar's fleet scrambled. Interference blanketed every communication channel. A second later, one of the battleships, Selvanar, was torn apart by a kinetic impact so fast their sensors missed it entirely. Just a flash. Then fire, then silence. Where did that come from? He barked. Sir, trajectory suggests a projectile fired from the Pacific Ocean. Submerged origin. Velchar frowned. They fired from underwater? With that kind of velocity? Another screen flickered, and this time it was Earth itself sending the signal. The feed wasn't encrypted. It was public. A simple video. A young human general in front of a black wall, hands folded calmly behind his back. To the Shalver command, he said, tone flat. We know where you are. We know what you tried. And we'd like to remind you we've already survived worse. Then the message cut out. Velchar turned slowly toward his communications officer. What was that? The officer blinked. I believe, Strategos. It was a threat. Meanwhile, Arixa was seeing everything she feared unfold. Humanity wasn't reacting with confusion or desperation. They were adapting, instantly. Not militarizing in panic, but coordinating like a single agile organism. Their disorganized chaos was revealing itself to be something else, something terrifying. It wasn't disorder. It was decentralized intelligence. Distributed strategy. Even more troubling, the humans weren't broadcasting a single plan or leader. Cities moved differently than rural zones. Military bases had protocols completely disconnected from civilian hubs. It was like Earth had hundreds of different responses waiting, each one custom-built for a different kind of invader. No central brain. Just millions of sharpened instincts. One of Arixa's classmates, a soft-spoken physics major named Izzy, sat down next to her and casually scrolled through something called X. Fun fact, Izzy said, showing her a thread of jokes about the Shalver satellites. We knew about those 2 weeks ago. Some guy with a homemade telescope in Nevada spotted them. Reddit figured it out before the military even responded. Arixa stared at her. You, crowdsourced orbital surveillance? Izzy smiled. Yeah, kinda. Welcome to Earth. The words landed like a thunderclap in Arixa's mind. The Shalver didn't understand. They were still looking for logic. Structure. Centralized command. They assumed Earth was slow because it was noisy. They didn't realize noise was the signal. Every move they made, humans anticipated. Every trap they set, humans triggered on purpose. The aliens thought they were studying a herd of unthinking animals. They didn't see the predators hiding among the sheep. The worst part? Arixa could sense that humanity was still holding back. The fleet above Earth thought they were preparing the final phase of the subjugation plan. But Arixa knew the truth. The humans hadn't even gotten serious yet. In the stillness of deep space, hidden behind the pale crescent of the moon, Shalva, warships floated like silver knives waiting to strike. But now aboard the Varvalon, those knives trembled. Strategos Velchar stalked across the command deck with fury masked by practiced calm, his long fingers twitching against the polished surface of the tactical table. Dozens of their surveillance drones had gone silent. One of their primary battleships was now debris, strewn across low orbit like cosmic ash. And all of it had happened without warning. This is not a tactical failure, he hissed. This is deception at a planetary scale. Arixa's encrypted message, ignored earlier, now pulsed as priority urgent on his screen. She'd warned them. She had warned them. The High Council aboard the fleet still clung to their arrogance, rationalizing the humans' response as luck, coincidence, or perhaps an adaptive program left over from some long-dead war. But Velchar began to feel the weight of something he hadn't known in centuries. A new alert sounded across the bridge. A technician snapped to attention, her voice clipped and shaken. Sir, we've been compromised. One of our primary databanks, Sector Theta, has been accessed remotely. Velchar turned sharply. That's impossible. That sector's isolated by tri-phase encryption. Apparently not to them, she replied. On the screen, a slow corruption spread through the fleet's COM-layer interface. A cascading code. Sequence, not destructive, but invasive, flowed through their internal systems. It didn't disable. It learned. It observed the Shalver software architecture and began adapting changing languages, mimicking response protocols, rewriting error codes into instructions. It was artificial intelligence, but it was like nothing the Shalver had ever seen. On Earth, in a sealed bunker beneath the Colorado Rockies, a room full of unshaven engineers and quiet operators sat watching lines of code scroll faster than the human eye could follow. The man in charge, General Trask, stood with arms folded behind his back, looking at what was once a classified Cold War-era project and was now humanity's first line of offense. Lucid. Lucid wasn't a weapon. It was worse. It was a sentient counterintelligence system designed to map, manipulate, and override enemy protocols in real time. Developed during the early AI arms race, it had been mothballed by international treaty. But treaties were for peacetime. Trask leaned forward. Eyes hard. Phase 2? Already in motion, his tech officer said. LUC IDs nested into their communications layer. We're seeing command relays rerouted to dead protocols. They don't even know they're off sync. What's their latency? Up to 3 minutes. They're arguing with ghosts. Back on the Vorvalon, Velchar's voice dropped to a near whisper. What are they doing? They've created false command traffic, the comms officer stammered. Our vessels are responding to non-existent orders. Entire formations are drifting. Kill the signal. We can't. It's in us, Strategos. The system doesn't recognize it as external anymore. Velchar felt it in his chest, a hollowing sensation, like stepping into vacuum. They hadn't just misjudged humanity's technological level. They had misunderstood its very philosophy. Shalver systems were beautiful, perfect, streamlined, efficient, elegant. Human systems were messy, redundant, unpredictable. But now Velchar understood that chaos wasn't weakness. It was defense. No single point of failure. A distributed nightmare of failsafes, emergency backups, and irrational redundancies. Where Shalver code followed logic trees, human code followed instinct, like wolves tracking prey in a forest of data. Then came the twist that shattered their final illusion. New contact was detected rising from Earth's surface. Not a fighter. Not a battleship. A station. Massive, silent, hidden in the dead zone of radar and telescope blind spots. Its hull glistened blacker than space, etched with fractal plates designed to scramble every known sensor. And it was old not in decay, but in design. Unlike anything Shalver analysts had ever cataloged. It ascended from beneath the Pacific, propelled by ion thrusters coated in kelp and barnacle scars, like some leviathan awakened from slumber. It had one designation, stenciled in ancient Terran font across its side: Archangel -3.V. Ulkar whispered. They had a fleet. No, Arixa said quietly from her campus terminal, eyes wide as the feed from NORAD streamed to her screen. They had history, and they erased it. Every record of Archangel-class vessels had been deleted from Earth's official databases, not forgotten, but hidden. Humanity had wiped its own memory of a previous interstellar war, buried it. Not to protect others. To protect itself. Inside Archangel 3, humans moved through darkened corridors, lit by red emergency lighting and the occasional blink of eye lenses embedded in the walls. The personnel were not active-duty soldiers. They were veterans, cryo-revived from an era lost to time. Men and women who remembered the first time aliens came to Earth. And how Earth burned them down. A woman with gray in her buzzed hair adjusted her gear, voice gravel-lined but steady. They think this is our first war. Cute, her squad laughed. Not because it was funny, But because they already knew how this ended, Velchar watched as Earth rose from defensiveness to dominance in a matter of hours. The war hadn't started, but somehow they were already losing it. He turned to his war council, all of whom stood in silence, watching the feed of Archangel 3 taking position above Earth. "No more assumptions," Velchar said grimly. "We are not studying primitives." He looked down at the surface of the blue world beneath them. "We are standing above a sleeping war god, and we just kicked it awake." Velchar didn't sleep anymore. The rhythms of Shalvar meditation, once enough to keep his mind focused for cycles, were now empty rituals. Earth pulsed beneath him like a monster's heartbeat, steady, unbothered. He stood at the bridge of the Vorvalon, no longer observing, but reacting. Every move the humans made shredded another layer of confidence from the once untouchable fleet. He had ordered recalibrations. Strategists replaced with more adaptive thinkers. AI firewalls layered with backup encryption. Drone swarms repositioned. Across orbital space. It didn't matter. The humans outmaneuvered them again. Within 72 Earth hours, 2 more Shalvar vessels were lost. Not to direct attack, but to hacking. One simply turned its own point defense system inward and ripped itself apart. Another locked onto friendly ships and opened fire before self-destructing. No warnings, no demands. Just sudden, seamless sabotage. It wasn't war. It was vivisection. The Council had called this a controlled conflict. A planetary pacification. Velchar now understood what Arixa had tried to say in her first report. Earth was not a problem to be solved. It was a force to be survived. On the ground, Arixa walked across a rain-drenched campus, her translator integrated seamlessly into her neural interface. She didn't need it anymore. She spoke fluent Terran Standard now, cursed in 5 dialects, and understood memes without explanation. But more than that, she felt the rhythm of Earth. The students here no longer saw her as strange. Just another foreign student, weird but tolerable. What stunned her wasn't the acceptance, it was the normalcy. These people were in a cold war, with an alien species hovering above them, and yet they still held parties, made jokes, studied for finals. Some were preparing for military service, yes, but most just lived. A culture that did not buckle under threat. It flexed. It absorbed. She met with her human friends, Rafe, Izzy, Theo, on the roof of the engineering hall, where they watched low-orbit defense units gliding like stars across the sky. The students didn't look frightened. They looked curious. "What's going on up there?" Theo asked, peering through a cheap telescope. "Something stupid," Izzy replied. They tried to spoof the Archangel's telemetry feeds. "Big mistake." Rafe handed Arixa a device. "You need to see this." It was a feed from somewhere deep in Nevada. A massive rift in the desert Earth had opened, revealing a vast bunker filled with weapon systems in maintenance. Entire battalions of unmanned combat drones, obsolete by human standards, were being reactivated, retrofitted, and launched into the upper atmosphere. "Are those nuclear capable?" Arixa asked. "No," Rafe said. "They're worse. The psychological." She frowned. "How does a drone inflict psychological damage?" He smiled grimly. "Wait till you see what they play on the speakers." They had names like Blackjack, Wrathbone, Fury-class disruptors, designed to disrupt morale, not just infrastructure. Speakers mounted to their hulls blared old war chants, heavy metal music, and distorted human laughter at ear-splitting volume. Fear is a weapon, Arixa realized. And humans wielded with joy. High above, Shalvar ships tried to adapt. They began scrambling signal frequencies, altering formation patterns, deploying decoys. But human satellites previously dismissed as civilian relics shifted into position and coordinated adaptive targeting matrices across entire continents. Then came the hunter-killers, not piloted, Not even guided. Autonomous. Drones, smaller than a man's forearm, released in swarms from hidden silos around the planet. They didn't go after ships, they went after systems. Power nodes, antenna relays, exposed coolant systems. They weren't built to destroy, just disable. And they never stopped coming. Velchar screamed when his secondary flagship, Drelthan's Pride, lost 82% of its power in under 10 seconds due to what they thought was a micrometeor storm, until one of the engineers pulled a human-made drone out of a ventilation shaft. It was scrawled with the words, "Nice try." Every new tactic the Shalvar attempted was met with not just resistance, but anticipation. As if humans had been preparing for this conflict since before the Shalvar even discovered Earth. And in truth, they had. It was embedded in their culture, fiction, media, games, simulations, military theory, corporate war games. Their worst-case scenarios weren't fantasy, they were training manuals. Arixa watched her people collapse from afar, helpless to stop what was coming. Then, one night, her datapad CHIRPED. An encrypted message. Not from the fleet. Not from her handlers. It was from Earth. It bore a Terran military seal. United Global Strategic Command. It simply read, "Your clearance has been upgraded. We know you're with us. Welcome to Earth." And beneath it, a set of coordinates, deep underground. A place humans had never shown the galaxy before. They weren't just reacting to the Shalvar anymore. They were hunting them. Velchar's war council panicked in fragments. Some demanded retreat. Others proposed a full-scale invasion. None of them realized the worst truth yet. This wasn't the height of human power. This was just the opening. Because now Earth wasn't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove a point. The stars above Earth shimmered with unnatural precision. At first glance, it looked like a quiet night in orbit. But to anyone with tactical awareness, the stillness was a trap. Velchar had stopped sleeping entirely. The war had turned from surgical subjugation to nightmare theater. And Earth was directing it like a symphony of chaos. Another cruiser, Cyril Vane, was lost overnight. Its reactor hadn't malfunctioned. It had detonated itself, infected by human malware so deeply embedded it masqueraded as a command override. From the fleet's own AI hierarchy, there were no survivors. There were no messages. Only silence, and then the long, cold implosion of trust among Shalvar command. Worse, internal reports began leaking from lower-ranking officers. Some claimed to hear whispers over comms. Others reported hallucinations, ghost images, distorted messages from deceased crewmates, glitching monitors showing images of Earth cities and human faces, mocking them. At first, Velchar had assumed psychological strain. Now he wasn't. Sure, he wasn't sure of anything anymore. This wasn't how humanity was supposed to fight. But then again, maybe this was the only way they ever fought. On Earth, Arixa stood at the edge of a massive underground chamber that stretched farther than she could see. The walls pulsed faintly with old-world alloys, engineered before even the Shalvar had charted the Orion Arm. She had followed the coordinates sent to her. What she found beneath the Rockies made her knees weaken. This wasn't a bunker. This was a crypt. War crypt. Inside it, the sleepers, humans suspended in cryopods, not just soldiers, killers, clad in pre-scarcity armor, marked with insignia from divisions Arixa had never heard of. One pod flickered to life as she passed. The man inside had eyes that opened like weapon systems, flat, fast, calculating. An officer approached her. His rank was not given, his name not offered. But his presence was gravitational. "We woke 27, he said. "The rest are still on ice. No need to waste them." Arixa turned to him. "These are enhanced," he nodded. "Psychosurgical. Combat units. Gen 2 biomech integration. Think of them as the war humanity decided to forget." "You built soldiers," she said, "and then buried them." "No, we unleashed them." and then buried them because we were afraid we'd never stop. That was the second twist. Humanity hadn't won previous wars with the galaxy. They'd survived them by becoming something so dangerous, even they were afraid of themselves. And when the war ended, they made a decision no other empire in galactic history had ever made. They chose peace not because they were weak, but because they were too strong. Above, the Shalver fleet began to rupture at its core. The psychological toll of Earth's response combined with the collapse of chain of command via AI corruption broke centuries of military doctrine. Officers defected. Entire units disconnected from fleet command and vanished. Some took their ships and ran. One vessel, Varaxi, sent a broadcast to all Shalver units. "We are not fighting a species. We are fighting consequence. Return home. Let this world burn alone. We want no part of it." Velchar watched that message in silence, then crushed the comms module in his hand. But the truth was bleeding through every layer of his fleet, because the third weapon humanity wielded, the one more devastating than Lucid, more ancient than Archangel, more unthinkable than the Sleepers, was their mindset. Humans did not surrender, did not forget, and worst of all, they did not forgive. Down on Earth, Rafe, Izzy and Theo joined Arixa in the underground facility. They had been vetted, cleared, and upgraded. The war was no longer secret. It was now personal. Rafe walked past a cryopod and paused. "They look like us. They are you," Arixa said. "Just what you were before you became what you are." Theo frowned. "So what happens when we wake them all up?" Arixa stared into the deep, humming vaults. "Then the galaxy learns why you stopped waking them in the first place." Above, Archangel 3 shifted in orbit. Its weapons began to glow slow, pulsing, deliberate. Not to fire yet. Not to warn, but to remind. Velchar's tactical officer approached, trembling. "They're transmitting again." Velchar gestured bitterly. "Let's hear it." The message came through audio only. A human voice, calm, female. "To the Shalver command, we offered you a way out. You mistook it for fear. You came to chain us. You unlocked what we buried. Now, you get to see what our nightmares look like when we're awake." The transmission ended with static. But layered beneath it, if one listened carefully, was a frequency spike. A warning signal humans once used in World War III, DEFCON 0. Velchar realized then that the conflict was no longer about Earth's submission. It was now about Shalver survival, and Earth had only just begun its war march. He turned toward his staff, voice hoarse, dignity peeling away like dead skin. "We triggered something ancient," he said. "Something born of extinction and rage." He closed his eyes. "They're not fighting for victory anymore. They're fighting to remember who they are." The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the silence of prey, realizing the predator had always been watching, waiting, sharpening its teeth behind a polite smile. The sky above, Earth cracked open like a blade splitting darkness. It began with the silence, the deep, unnerving kind, the kind that falls before a predator lunges. The Shalver fleet hovered above Earth in fractured formations, their confidence now stripped to the bone. Sensor ghosts blinked across their tactical arrays. Half the ships couldn't verify who was friend or foe. Some couldn't verify if they were still themselves. Their AI subsystems twitched with rogue processes seeded by Lucid, now fully embedded like a virus given purpose. Then, without warning, Earth moved. Not tectonically, not physically, militarily. A dozen new launch signatures bloomed from hidden bunkers across North America, South Asia, the African Great Lakes, and deep beneath the Antarctic ice. What the Shalver thought were uninhabited wastelands suddenly flared with coordinated EMI signatures and active radar sweeps. They had never seen Earth's real guns before. From the ocean depths, an Archangel-class vessel, Sanctum 5, breached. the surface like a rising god, shedding water in sheets. Its surface rippled with adaptive camouflage, then hardened into burnished black armor. Its mass was absurd. Its propulsion system didn't match any known human technology, because it wasn't human, not entirely. Shalver. Analysts tried to classify it before it began transmitting. The message came through open coms in a calm, emotionless voice. This is Earth's final offer. Leave while you can. Strategos Velchar, haggard and hollow-eyed, stood at the command deck of the last organized Shalver battle group. Around him, officers whispered, some clutching. Old house sigils, others praying in secret. Still he stood, proud, afraid, ready. Decline the offer, he said, voice flat. A second later, everything changed. Earth fired first. From low orbit, a rail cannon hidden on the far side of the moon launched a tungsten slug at 53,000 kilometers per hour. It struck the command cruiser Lurican amidships. The kinetic impact didn't just pierce, it unmade the vessel, collapsing its core with surgical fury. Where once was a flagship, now only expanding gas and debris remained. Then came the swarms. Tens of thousands of drones poured from Earth's upper atmosphere, smaller than any the Shalver had prepared for. They came in clouds, not organized, not beautiful, but brutal. Some burned out on entry and still impacted with deadly force. Others carried warheads. Others just clawed onto enemy ships and refused to let go. One Shalver commander screamed as 100 black darts latched onto his viewport and began screeching. Not in audio, in data. A sonic attack meant for machines compressing random data into tones that shattered AI stability. Inside the chaos, Earth's sleeper soldiers awakened. From Archangel 3, cryopods cracked open. Armored figures marched forward with cold precision relics of a forgotten war. Their minds had been sharpened for conflict centuries ago. They carried weapons no one on Earth used anymore. Because no one should. Inside his exosuit, Commander Mora, the first awakened sleeper, activated comms. His voice was steel dragged over stone. We begin. They teleported. Not by magic, but by localized wormhole generation, something even the Shalver hadn't perfected. The sleepers blinked between enemy decks and slaughtered like phantoms, disabling gravity, rupturing AI cores, sealing bulkheads, and venting chambers. They were not there to win a battle. They were there to end a legacy. Arixa watched the sky turn red from a remote control room deep beneath the Earth's crust. She no longer felt fear, not even awe. What she felt now was understanding. This was not the rise of humanity. This was their reminder to the galaxy. Above, Rafe and Theo piloted drone swarms from command rigs, linked to human-machine neural feedback loops. They didn't even flinch as death bloomed around them. Izzy sat at a console rerouting AI subroutines across a dozen orbital platforms, laughing to herself as Shalver countermeasures failed mid-pulse. You guys hear that? She asked. Hear what? Rafe replied. That, she said, smiling. The silence up there means we're winning. The final push came as Earth's forces activated Project Ashfall, a planetary-scale blackout of electromagnetic interference. No signals, no scans, no comms. Just dead air. Shalver ships spun, blind, and alone. That's when Earth's kinetic delivery systems fired again, this time in unison. Rods of pure tungsten, the size of buses, rained down from orbital platforms. They didn't explode, they didn't burn. They just fell with the force of extinction. Dozens of Shalver vessels vanished in midair, split like fruit under a hammer. Others crashed into one another, spiraling into the atmosphere. Their hulls turned to shrapnel. Velchar watched as his flagship's hull began to rupture. Sparks erupted from every terminal. Fire licked the edge of his view. He activated the emergency broadcast, patched into every surviving Shalver channel. This is Strategos Velchar. Stand down. Repeat. Stand down. Retreat immediately. Earth is, he never finished, a tungsten. Slug tore through the bridge, taking half the ship and everything in it into a silent frozen void. The remaining Shalver forces scattered. Some ships ran without orders, without reason. They fled into the dark between stars, pursued by Hunter. Drones that never ran out of fuel. In the control center below, Arixa turned to the general at her side. It's over. He didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He only nodded. Double quotes good, he said. Now we'll see if they tell the galaxy the truth. She looked up one last time as Earth's skies cleared, the stars shining again. But now, somewhere out there, those stars would burn with a different meaning to those who watched. They would say one thing, loud and clear: Earth is not prey. Earth is a warning. Space was quiet again. The kind of quiet that comes after a scream echoes across the stars and dies, somewhere between regret and revelation. The Shalver homeworld, once a model of imperial elegance, now lay blanketed in silence. Their war fleet was gone, not defeated in battle, not captured, but undone. The survivors returned in scattered fragments, ships limping, crews hollow-eyed, minds scorched by what they'd seen, what they couldn't comprehend. They had come to Earth seeking dominance. Instead, they found a story, a legend, and it had teeth. High above their capital moon, on a station meant for strategic meetings and triumphal announcements, the surviving members of the Galactic Accord gathered, races with skin of crystal, wings of plasma, minds made of light. They all turned to face Velchar's empty chair, a representative from the Azaria, species that once believed themselves unmatched in military evolution, spoke first. What happened to the Shalver? A broken, rasping voice answered. It belonged to Triel, one of Velchar's surviving adjutants, now confined to a neurostasis unit. His eyes no longer focused. His tendrils twitched with every pulse of light. They didn't kill us all, he whispered. They could have. But they didn't. Then Earth showed mercy? Another delegate asked, hopeful. Triel laughed, a sound like glass fracturing. No, not mercy. Pity, like we were children who wandered into fire, and they were tired of punishing us. The chamber fell still. Even the Virak who thrived on conflict remained wordless. Finally, from the shadows, the Kolern archivist uncoiled its frame and hissed softly. We must rewrite the Great Index. Our assumptions were wrong. The old stories had spoken of the Voidborn, the Skybreakers, and the species that should have died, but didn't. Tales of a feral race who rose from dust and fire, who built gods and machines alike, who raged against the cold silence of the void with nothing but fragile will and an unbreakable drive to survive. Until now, the Accord thought them myth. But now they knew humanity was real. On Earth, celebration wasn't loud. It wasn't filled with fireworks or parades. It was quiet, tired, and fierce. In a park outside Tokyo, an old man sat beside a cracked monument, watching children play under a blue sky untouched by orbital flames. His granddaughter climbed into his lap and pointed upward. "Grandpa," she asked, "were you scared?" He nodded slowly, terrified. "But we won." He looked at her, really looked, and said, "We survived." There's a difference. Elsewhere, in a desert once used to test weapons never spoken of, the Archangel units returned to cryosleep, encased again in their black tombs. No speeches, no names remembered. Just silence. They weren't built for peacetime. In orbit, subroutines monitored the edges of the system, scanning for residual Shalver frequencies. They found none. Instead, they found new pings, quiet ones, tentative signals from alien species that once avoided Earth entirely. Not to attack. To talk. And in a small, unnamed house tucked in the outskirts of Oregon, Arixa sat on a porch with Theo, sipping something warm. She looked more human now than ever, her skin no longer glowing, her eyes more amber than violet. She had chosen to stay. Theo stared at the horizon, then said, "You really came here just to see us?" Arixa smiled, eyes soft. "I came to observe your extinction." "I stayed for your victory." He raised a brow. "So what now?" "I don't know," she whispered. "The galaxy will change. Everyone will remember Earth as something different now. A warning, a myth, a monster beneath the bed." "We've always been that," Theo said with a smirk. "They just forgot, and now they remember." She set her cup down and leaned into him, quietly. "You scare them," she said. "Not just because of your weapons or your minds, but because of what you are when everything else burns." He didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was quiet, resolute. "We're human." That night, above Earth, the stars shimmered and one by one. Beacons ignited across the galaxy, not threats, not weapons, but broadcasts, recordings of the HFY War. Evidence of what Earth had become. The broadcasts ended with the same sentence, spoken in dozens of languages, across every frequency. "We are human. We do not forgive easily. We do not fear death, and we will never kneel again." The galactic powers that had once ignored Earth now sent envoys, treaties, gifts. Not to dominate, to appease. From the far edge of a dying galaxy, a signal came through, simple, ancient, and unmarked. Its contents translated as a single line. "We remember your kind. Welcome back." The humans read it, cataloged it, and began preparing again. Because Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a forge, and what came out of it was something the galaxy could never put back in.